Hey guys, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and today I have another Valhalla plugin overview for you. Today we're going to be using the Valhalla VintageVerb. Previously, I went over the Valhalla Shimmer reverb plugin. It was only $50, and this one's only $50 too. Just like the Shimmer plugin and a lot of other plugins from Valhalla, they're very easy to learn and use because when you drag over a knob or an option, it actually tells you down here what that knob does. So this is more or less going to be more of an overview and me testing it out on a few different instruments as opposed to a full tutorial. Although I will go over what all the knobs and functions do. So real quick, let me play you what I have here. I've got sort of like this bluesy down-tempo track. I got vocals, piano, bass guitar, organ, as well as the drummer plugin filling in a beat for us. So let me just play this for you. Everything's completely dry, except there's EQ and compression on all the channels.
Remember back then, that day when we said that we were in love. So foolish, careless and young, how could we be so wrong? We live by the fire we make, and someday soon it'll be gone. There's nothing more to say when you can't live by your own rule.
Cool, so like I said, everything's dry. There's just EQ and compression on everything. Let's just solo out the drummer, and I'm just going to set my locators over that little loop there. Open up Valhalla, and let's test it on our drums. Let me just go ahead and make it active. Now, there's actually three different colors of the VintageVerb. There's the 70s color, there's the 80s color, and there's the sort of modern color. The 70s verb has a downsampled sound, so it's going to sound a lot warmer. It's not going to sound as bright as the 80s or the modern verb. Also, the modulation, there's a chorus modulation on all three of these modes, and it's a bit noisier on this one. On the 80s verb, it's a full bandwidth reverb, basically meaning there's no downsampling, so it's going to sound a bit brighter, and the modulation is going to be a bit heavier, a bit more chorusy. And then the modern verb version of it, the modulation's a bit cleaner, a bit brighter sounding. So let's go back to the 70s color, and let's go over what all the controls do. Now, in any reverb plugin, your mix knob is going to control the difference between your completely dry signal and your completely wet signal. So when I pull this down to 0, you're just going to hear the drums as is. When I pull the mix up to 100%, you're just going to hear reverb, none of the original dry signal. Now, normally when I use reverbs, I put the reverb on an aux track and I bus over to it, and we keep the mix at 100%. Just for sake of demonstration today, I'm not going to use any aux tracks. I'm just going to put the VintageVerb directly on the channel strips. So when we do it that way, it means we have to sort of blend the dry and the wet signal together in a way that doesn't sound too echoey. All right, the big decay knob is essentially going to control how quickly the reverb decays. How long is the reverb tail? How long does the reverb last for? It specifically controls the mid frequencies because, as we'll find over here in the dampening options, there's a sort of a different control for the high frequencies and the low frequencies. Although those frequencies are sort of affected by the decay knob as well, but we'll get to that in a moment. So decay up, you're going to get a longer reverb tail. Decay down, you're going to get a shorter reverb tail. Almost all reverb plugins are going to have a pre-delay. The pre-delay is the distance between the dry signal and your first echo, your first delay, your first reverb delay. Essentially, reverb is just a whole bunch of echoes all on top of each other, hundreds and hundreds of echoes and delays all on top of each other. So the very first one is called the pre-delay time. It's the distance between your dry signal and your wet signal. So the further you pull this up, the more it's going to sort of make the reverb sound more distant, like echoing off of a wall further away, and the closer the pre-delay is, the shorter it is, the smaller the space is going to sound. But we'll also find that the size knob has a play on how large the reverb sounds as well. So I usually don't go crazy with this unless you want it to sound like the Grand Canyon. So I'll put this around maybe 20 or 30 milliseconds. Let's see what that sounds like. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll pull the mix all the way up just to listen to the reverb by itself, and then blend it in with the dry signal. So actually for the next few examples, I'm going to keep the mix all the way up just so we can just hear the reverb. All right, the dampening module. The dampening module essentially dampens high frequencies and low frequencies differently than dampening the mid frequencies here. So the mid-frequency decay time, or you could call it dampening, is affected by this knob, but the high frequency and the low frequency dampening is affected over here. So what you can do is you can set a frequency point for where the basically to divide the high and mid frequencies. So if I set this to 5750, that means that frequencies below 5750 are going to be controlled by the decay knob. Frequencies above 5750 are going to be decayed more quickly than those middle frequencies below 5750. So why do we do that? Well, in an acoustic space, high frequencies are absorbed and die out quicker than mid and low frequencies. Mid and low frequencies have a tendency to travel and echo further and longer for a longer amount of time. So this sort of mimics a real life acoustic space. If you pull this all the way up, all your frequencies all the way up to 20,000 hertz are going to decay all at the same time. So we don't really want that. If we want a reverb that sounds more like a real acoustic space, you want to have a high frequency crossover so that frequencies above a certain point decay quicker than those below that point. You can also adjust the steepness of that high frequency roll off, so we can adjust that here. Now, bass frequencies. Bass frequencies in a real acoustic environment have a tendency to build up in a very bad way, especially in corners. And sometimes natural reverb in a real acoustic space gets kind of boomy. And in the mixing world, we don't want our reverb to be that boomy. So what you can do is you can adjust your bass multiplier or multiple. When you push this up, your bass is going to be built up more. You're going to get a boomier reverb. When you pull it down, it's going to be less boomy. The bass frequency, sort of like with the high frequency up here, is a crossover between where the bass is affected by the bass multiplier. So if I set this to 1540 is kind of high. If I set this to like 500, 580, this means that we can multiply the bass frequencies below 580, and frequencies above 580 are going to be controlled by the decay knob, again, the mid frequencies. So essentially what these two knobs are doing is setting like a band pass for the frequencies that the decay knob's actually going to control. So in our case, between 580 and 5840. So let me just play around with the bass multiplier so you can hear what I'm talking about. So I'm going to pull the bass multiplier down. We'll hear a very, not so boomy reverb. So you hear when I pulled the bass multiplier up, it got very, very dense in the low end. All right, let's move on to the shape module. We've got a size knob that basically just mimics the size of the room. So if I put this to a smaller room, it's going to sound a little bit more echoey and flutter echoey. And sometimes when you adjust the values during playback, it causes some glitchiness there. But when you pull it up, the room sounds bigger. Pull it down, the room sounds smaller. So I'm going to pull it up, not quite all the way up, put it about 75%. Now the attack time is the attack time of each echo of the reverb. So when you pull this up, your reverb echoes are going to be very sort of blurred, which can help the room sound bigger. So let me play it with the attack time up a bit. So when you pull the attack time down, the attack of each reverb echo is a little bit more present, a little bit more harder sounding. Keep in mind, you may think for something like drums, we want this shorter, but we don't really, because if I pull the mix knob down to blend my wet and dry signal, you'll find that the echoes of the reverb are almost too echoey. When you pull the attack time up, it sort of blurs the echo. I don't want this to sound like a delay, I want it to sound like a reverb. So pulling the attack time up a bit actually helps it to sound more like a reverb and not just like an echo off of a wall or a flutter echo off of a wall. All right, the diffusion module diffuses your early and late reflections. So you'll find when you pull this down, again, it's going to sound very echoey. Sort of like a sound wave going back and forth between two, parallel walls. When you diffuse something, it mimics scattering the frequencies, scattering all the sound waves in different directions, so you get a more diffuse sounding reverb. That's typically what I want. I almost never want an echoey reverb. I want the reverb to sound very evenly spread across our acoustic space. There's also a modulation module. Basically, this applies a chorus effect to the reverb. So if you want like heavy chorusing, you can pull up the rate, which is how quickly the LFO controlling the chorus is moving. So you want a quicker LFO or a slower LFO, and the depth is how much of the chorus you're actually going to hear. So let me just sweep that through and let you hear that. It's very, very subtle effect, but sometimes can help to make the reverb sound a little bit warmer. All right, and lastly, there's just an EQ. There's a high frequency cut and a low frequency cut. This is just sort of a high frequency and low frequency cut on the very tail end of the signal flow of the reverb. So if you pull your high cut all the way up and your low cut all the way down, you'll find you get a much brighter reverb, but that's also affected by the dampening over here too. If your dampening is really low, your high cut's not really going to have as much of an effect because the high frequencies have already been dampened quite a bit over here. So a brighter reverb. Or a warmer reverb if you pull the high cut down, which is typically what we want to do. The low cut helps to cut out any low frequency reverb that's making the signal sound too boomy. So essentially just band passing the reverb here. Now, in addition to all the controls up here, you can also change what mode you're in. Right now, we're just in concert hall mode, so maybe I want a plate reverb instead. I can see how all these settings would work with a plate instead of a concert hall setting. It's a much different sound there. So all these are modeled after real impulse responses. So, which is really cool. So it's like, if you're looking for like something for drums, I'll usually go with like a chamber, more like a room sound. And with something like vocals, I'll go with like a plate sound. And instruments, I like to go with the plate sound as well. Let's go back to the hall though. The hall sounded kind of cool like this. Let's see what the hall sounds like, and I'm going to switch between the three different colors just to see what they sound like on the three different colors. Cool. There's also a presets menu. Let's try out some of these. Let's go up to chambers, not chambers. Let's go to halls, and let's go to snare hall. Let's see what that sounds like. Cool, we'll go with that for our drums. Let's try this out on vocals. Just copy it over. I'm not going to use that same setting on the vocals, though. I'm probably going to use a much longer reverb tail. I'm going to use probably some sort of a plate. Let's go to plates. Let's try the vocal plate here and see what that sounds like.
Remember back then, that day when we said that we were in love. So foolish, careless, and young. How could we be so wrong? We live by the fire we make, and someday soon it'll be gone. There's nothing more to say.
Cool, I like that. Let's go over to our piano here. Let's try out a setting on our piano. I'll probably use a plate here as well, but probably something a little bit more diffuse and probably even more of a tail on it. Let's try the, let's actually just try a hall for the piano. Let's try the very nice hall setting. Yeah, that's nice. And let me pull that decay down just a touch. It's a bit too long. And I'm gonna pull that over to my organ as well. Let's see what that sounds like on the organ. I'll probably pull the decay up on the organ. Cool, so we got some nice tones in there. Let's just see what this sounds like with everything in.
Remember back then, that day when we said that we were in love. So foolish, careless, and young. How could we be so wrong? We live by the fire we make, and someday soon it'll be gone. There's nothing more to say when you can't live by your own rule.
Alright, so that's my overview of the Valhalla VintageVerb plugin. I really love this plugin for what it does, and especially for the price. As a lot of you guys know, I prefer the Lexicon PCM reverb bundle. I bought it some time ago, and I really like that plugin for plates, vintage plates, halls, things like that. But the problem with that plugin, although it's a great plugin, it's $700 for the bundle. If you're looking for maybe a cheaper alternative that can emulate a lot of those same tones, you may want to check out the VintageVerb from Valhalla, because it's only $50. It's super easy to use, and there's a lot of great presets in it as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. Hey guys, if you'd like to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel to see multiple new videos added every week. Also, you can check out carneymediagroup.com, where you can view all of my video tutorials, search for specific topics, download the videos ad-free, and in some cases you can purchase session content so you can work along with me in the video. Also, please consider giving a monthly contribution at patreon.com/MusicTechHelpGuy. As always, thanks for your support and thanks for watching.